Alrighty, well, welcome to today's webinar. We'll go ahead and give folks about 30 more seconds to get in the room, and we will go and get started. Hopefully your Wednesday afternoon is going well. Oh yeah, lots of folks streaming in. Great. Okay, once I see that participant number slow down, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give folks just a couple more seconds. We're right at 2 o'clock, or I'm sorry, 2 o'clock Pacific time. I'm on, we're over here. I'm in Washington, so perfect. All right, looks like things are slowing down. Wonderful. Welcome to today's webinar, Prepping Students for Opportunities in the Creative Economy. The education team at WACOM is pleased to sponsor this ACTE webinar and welcome our guest presenter, Matthew Waney. And we also have a special video cameo appearance from Carson Smith at Nickelodeon. And Matthew will share all of that information with you a little later. My name is Michelle Dick. I am the education specialist here at WACOM, part of the education team. And one of my favorite things is supporting teachers. And one of the ways that we do that is through webinars and trainings just like this. So happy to be here and super excited to be able to learn some insights and information from our presenter, Matthew, today. We are also doing a giveaway. So all of you who are joined us today live, we will be selecting 3 folks to win an Intuos tablet, and we'll announce those winners via email by the end of the week this week. So once we get all of that taken care of, we'll send out an email to announce those winners. Let's see. My slide doesn't, there we go. My slide wasn't participating there. So Wacom pen tablets and pen display solutions are the industry standard in technology worldwide in animation, gaming, film, video, and special effects design. Essentially, if you've watched it, worn it, driven it, it was probably designed at some point on a Wacom device. We are seeing more and more CTE educators discover the value of helping students use this technology as they prep for creative careers. A couple of housekeeping issues. This is being recorded. We'll share out this recording to you in our follow-up email. So you are welcome to share this recording with your colleagues who may not have been able to join us today. If you have any questions during the session, we will go ahead and drop those in the question and answer section. And we'll have a couple of points where we'll check in for some questions. And then we've reserved some time at the end of the webinar to make sure that we get through those questions. And just another reminder for those of you who joined us late, we will be selecting 3 winners from participants here on the call today for a free Intuos tablet, and that will be sent out via email. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Matthew, and he can introduce himself and share some information. I'm going to switch over so you can share your slides, Matthew. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And welcome, everybody. Yeah, thank you for taking the time on your Wednesday to come out here and check this out. I'm just going to talk a little bit. Let me pull up my slides. All right. We can see all that. All good, Michelle? Great. So again, we're going to be talking about like prepping students for opportunities in the creative economy. A little bit about myself. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I'm in Los Angeles Unified, so on the West Coast. I teach both CTE video production and animation. I've written over $2.5 million in grants over the last 7 or 8 years. I've helped other school districts sort of launch their own programs and build stuff through their curriculum. And I was honored a couple of years ago to be named the National Magnet Teacher of the Year for some of the partnerships and stuff that my students have been able to achieve along the way. And I'll get into this a little bit more, but I was also excited to be a part of developing the first approved apprenticeship program for animation, game design, and VFX. that was
Excuse me,
approved.
Matthew. I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. We are not seeing your slides.
Oh,
If you
I'm
could
not seeing
reshare your screen.
Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. All right, let me try that again. All right, how about that one?
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. All right. So again, so you haven't missed much. Just to sort of going through some of these things, and obviously, I'd love to reach out to me through LinkedIn, and we can connect. But yeah, I'll talk about that apprenticeship program later on, as far as what we can do to sort of get some of your students in to be a part of that as well. All right. So a little bit of what we'll be going over today, just a little bit of history of where my program has come from, uh, partnerships that I've had with community colleges for doing some dual enrollment, as well as some of my nonprofit partners, and then getting into some of the larger industry partners that I've been able to work with over the years. So, all right. So again, I teach in Los Angeles. I'm in LA Unified, which is the second largest school district in the nation. I teach at a Title I school, so most of my students come from low-income households. And we are a SPAN school, so we are a K through 12 campus. I teach primarily the high school classes in animation and video production, but we do have those classes at the middle school level too. So a lot of my students who come to me at the high school level have had at least a fundamental and some foundational skills and experiences with that along the way. So that's been a great with that. When I was brought in, they didn't have a video production program and they didn't have an animation program. So we started video production based on a grant that the school had gotten federally. And then the second year is like, I really love animation. I'd love to get that into our students' hands and just sort of the skills. I mean, being in Los Angeles, obviously the heart of Hollywood and stuff like that, where so much of this content is being made, that a lot of my students just, weren't even aware of some of the jobs that were out there. And one of the big lifts beyond just the sort of the equipment and things like that, it was just sort of the students buy-in, and it was because even though we are a magnet school that focuses on engineering and media arts, it's by lottery. So our students aren't coming in with necessarily a lot of experience. For some, it's the first time that they were introduced to these types of classes or CTE pathways. And so just a lot of kids were, they didn't feel comfortable drawing. They didn't feel like that was a skill they had, and they're just very intimidated at first. But we start very, very basic. We start very simple. And actually those first couple of years, I did a lot of stop motion because we didn't even have like a full computer lab at that point. So we were able to use our cameras to do that. But as we started moving up and got some funding and stuff for some WACOM tablets and for our computer lab, I just basically started telling the students, like, you know what, I'm not asking you to be a Disney or Pixar level animator at this point. And, that I think that's a huge ask. But what I'm willing to ask of you is just every day, every week, be willing to try something, be willing to try improve a skill, improve a tool, improve a technique that you might have that we're working on. And as we build forward, we'll be able to keep getting those skills stronger and stronger across our 2-year pathway. And then, it took a while for kids to buy into that, but they're really out there now. And the other thing I really stress to them is like, you don't always have to be doing the monsters and the dragons and the characters and stuff like that. I mean, just as important, you need backgrounds, you need props, you need vehicles, you need locations. And in some of my recent classes, I've had kids go in and like, I don't even want to go into animation, but I want to go into interior design. It's like, great, let's do some. You're going to be in charge of how our locations look, interiors, exteriors. How do you want that color palette to look and stuff like that? And really just building from there. And the other thing I really stress to my students is that even in the animation industry, close to half of the jobs, you don't need to be actively and directly doing the artwork. As far as the editing, sound design, the all the law elements and connected to that, the PR, the promotions, and just sort of all the producing that are required for the scale of what's happening there. You need people who are knowledgeable of how to draw better, of how this whole pipeline works, but they don't also always have to be the people who are delivering the assets there. But beyond that, it was also some of the parents, what are my kids going to do with art? How are they going to get a job with that? And so, that was sort of the second phase, and I guess not even second, it's kind of happening simultaneously to sort of get the parents to buy in as well. And just, the Otis College, which is in Los Angeles, puts out an annual creative economy report. And they've really just stressed recently how like visual effects, we see them in our superhero films, we see them in our animation projects that are out there, as well as just your everyday commercials and stuff like that, when they will take, your cloudy sky and drop in a sunny sky, just, simple yet subtle things like that. But those are really driving a lot of the stuff out there. And then I'll talk to the parents, you might not be able to see this on your screen, but as far as 2023, it's projected that animation is going to be making over $400 billion and going up to 580 by the end of the decade. Couple that with your gaming, which this year we're looking at over a quarter of a trillion dollars there, 250 billion. And we'll just keep going up from there. And then even the VFX that they were just talking about, your visual effects, already at 10 billion and looking to continue to increase along the way. So again, that means that those jobs are out there, and there are jobs that are in high demand and high need, because this technology is advancing so quickly that it's also something where they aren't able to fill all of those positions. So that's why it's great for us to get our students started, even if they're not doing this stuff in the classroom, to at least give them the fundamentals to be able to do that and work forward. Last thing, and then we'll get into sort of some of the stuff I've been doing. So here's some of the jobs out there that for 3D design necessarily. For the most part, you can kind of get some jobs out there. And the thing that I find most fascinating, if you look at this, we've got forensics animator, medical animator, mathematical modeler. I mean, these jobs obviously are built on 3D design. You've got forensics. We have a forensics class that's taught in our science department, and they're learning that you can use 3D modeling to actually, project the way that that bullet went, to be able to use sort of the scenes and rebuild the crime scene to help them solve cases. Medical examiners, where a lot of times, your former doctors are working on cadavers, but now they're doing 3D modeling where they can go in and without all the extra stuff that goes along with that, be able to work on these 3D simulated surgeries and techniques. And so again, this is just being used across so many industries where it isn't just animation and gaming where that's necessarily something that they can use. And then my last one here, compositing supervisor. And again, this is someone who will have experience, but they aren't doing any of the drawing. They are taking the backgrounds, they're taking the props, they're taking the vehicles, the characters, and they're putting it all together. So again, that's a job where, understand animation, understand what's kind of happening in those positions, but it's not necessarily you who's out there making that, those assets that need to be moved forward. All right, so I'm going to talk about three things along the way here. Dual enrollment, as I mentioned, and this is one thing that we started up back in 2018. And if you're not familiar with dual enrollment, it is, when a professor will come into my classroom, and I have it for both my animation and my video production classes, and they will co-teach the class with me. So where a lot of the kids who are trying to get some college credit are taking that after school on the weekends, and obviously that is adding into their already packed schedule sometimes. This is something where, again, they can do that at once. It saves them money. These classes are free for my students, so they're able to take those for that. It saves them time because, again, not only are they working on one assignment, that they're getting credit for both me as the high school class and for the college professor as well. And obviously saving time also lets them save effort. So they're kind of getting this 2-for-1 ability. And I just see this a lot of times. It just really increases their academic confidence. I have one class that sometimes we'll get some 9th graders or 10th graders into those classes. And, they're really reluctant. They're really hesitant. Oh, it's their first college class ever. They're just very intimidated by that. But as they soon learn, and we always do this in the spring, so they've at least got me for the fall to kind of get the fundamentals. I can kind of build their skills to be ready for what's going to be happening in these classes. And you just really see them take off and feel so confident that, they're getting their A's and B's in these college classes. And then that obviously is on their high school transcripts as well. And then ultimately it helps to build a bridge across high school and community colleges. So that could be a great pathway. And again, just allows students to explore things that they weren't used to or didn't have that opportunity to before. When we did this in Los Angeles, this was again 5 years ago, they didn't have any AME, which is the arts, media, and entertainment classes that were aligned for dual enrollment. So I just wanted this to be in the hands of my students. So I kind of volunteered and stepped up and sort of wrote the paperwork to be able to get that done. And then since then, we've now gone to 3 or 4, I guess we're up to 4 different AME ones that are in Los Angeles Unified that we're able to use. And basically, it's for my CTE concentrator, Conceptual Design 1, has been linked up to the Intro to Digital Arts through Los Angeles City College. For my students, they're getting 10 credits for that class because it is both college and that, where normally they'd only get 5. And for the for the college elements, they're getting 3 college credits, again, free of charge. And the great thing about these programs, how we set them up, is they're not just there at that community college where my students aren't going to go there. They want to go out to some of the public colleges across California. these classes are transferable to all of that. So there's close to 27 or 29 of those across California. So even students who are going on to some of the 4-year universities, they're able to take those credits with them. And even if they're not going into animation or video production, it's something that obviously they can use for their electives. So ultimately, here's a few, images of this. This is our pilot program we had a couple of years ago, and this was all back before COVID. And then in year 2, it hit us right as we were going into year 2, and everything kind of shifted to being at home, and students were able to still continue to work on that. So again, and they're using their technology, they're getting introduced, and everything again in this class is not them drawing original work, because a lot of it is compositing. Some of it is they're working as colorists on some of these exercises. So they're really getting introduced to the jobs that are out there for animation, for game design, really sort of see them starting to take off and build that confidence. And then again, and that was only the beginning. Our partnership with LACC has just really taken off since then. And what they've basically started doing, they've really embraced it, and they've started their K-12 LAUSD Day, where a couple days throughout the year, and they'll bring in different schools at that time, where kids get introduced to motion capture suits. They get to explore lighting, sound, makeup in their technical theater department. They get to get into some of their game design. And again, these aren't classes. This is really just sort of a tour day where they get to come and sort of see what programs and what types of certificates and stuff that they have going on there. We've had students take storyboarding classes there during the summer through this program. And again, it really gives them that chance to get their hands-on technology, hands-on experiences, working with people from the industry to be able to do that. One other program they've got is Experience City in the City, where again, this is a summer program that just launched this past year, where they take 10th to 12th graders, and they take anywhere from 15 to 25 students per pathway. And again, they're gaining more college credit. They're able to actually go on field trips. I know they got to go to Amazon this past year. They've got to go to a few other gaming locations as well. And really sort of get that chance to see what's going on. And some of these even have stipends for the students, so they're able to make a little bit of money during their summertime with that. And again, even though this is bound into the community college facet, it opens so much up to these students who, again, this might be their first time actually going to a college and taking classes on that campus itself along the way. And those are all sort of in person. And you'll see that what I love, and again, beyond just, my students who are into animation and cinema, this also helps some of our other students in my school who are into engineering, from the Amazon cloud classes to the cybersecurity and stuff going on like that, and stuff even beyond that. And then what they've done also is boot camps. And now these they've had, some of these they've had virtual, some of these were in person. So even if you're not in Los Angeles, even if you're not in California, these might be opportunities to look into for next summer for students to be able to sign up and possibly take. And again, they have great abilities where they're able to share this with the students. Back in 2022, last summer, they were just sort of piloting it, and it was just for animation students. I had 3 or 4 of my kids were able to go on this, again, getting 6 more units of college credit, where by the end of this, some of my students were a few classes short of getting their associate's degree, which again could help them getting on to that next part as they're moving on to careers and to different job opportunities. And then this past summer, I think we had 4 or 5 kids again did this, and then they expanded it. So they had a music program, they had a health and kinesiology program, one for animation, one for game design, game art design, and one for law. So again, these are opportunities that are happening in community colleges where I am. And I know not all of you are in Los Angeles, but those are things to reach out to your own community colleges that you're around. And even if they don't have these programs going, just talk to them about how this is being done elsewhere. And it can be even started something small, where just over the summer, they're taking 5, 10 kids, something like that, and seeing what classes they already have and being able to find a way to get your students into them as they move forward. And I just want to share the person who's really sort of set that up and take care of us is Dr. Karen Saisai, who's been there and just really, again, has been embracing. She's worked at the high school level as well as now at the college level. And so she's really there to sort of help bring our students who are mostly coming from low-income households, who don't always have these opportunities to see these types of experiences and in these types of programs, and really trying to make stuff work. And I just want to highlight here, I'm going to show one video. I actually had one of our students 2 years ago who was in that first cohort. UCLA was putting on its first pilot summer game lab for high school students. And one of my students, Pedro, here was selected for that. So I'm going to share this video with you, and just so you can sort of see what his experience was moving out of these summer boot camps.
Hello, my name is Pedro Rojas. I am a junior attending LAUSD USC MA Magnet. I had the opportunity to participate into UCLA Game Labs, where there would be one instructor with one assistant who would help us out reach our goal, in which was either creating an animation project as well as creating our very own board game. The second course of UCLA Game Labs focused on the actual game development and the game coding. Overall, it was quite challenging as someone who has never experienced coding or never experienced anything in that field of game development. So it caught me by surprise when we were assigned to make our own game with very helpful instructions and very helpful counselors. I was able to, in a matter of a week, make my own game, and it turned out to be a success. A few experiences I've had prior to taking Game Labs that assisted me was taking a CTE animation class at my high school, which was very beneficial as I was able to experience Photoshop and single-handedly being able to create my own original character. I was also able to create an adventure type game in my CTE animation class. Overall, throughout the weeks of UCLA Game Labs, it was really impactful to the experiences and skills that I've gained, as I was able to talk to people that were focused in that field. Not only that, but I was also given 4 UCLA credits for attending the course. Overall, I want to be a filmmaker, but the experiences and skills I've gained through UCLA Game Labs are impactful. From time management to turning in my projects to actually learning a few things like coding and impacting my animation skills as well.
And I will say, Pedro, he graduated last year, and he is now off at NYU's film school, and he is the first student of ours ever to have gone there. So we're really proud of him. And again, he just really embraced these opportunities. And as he said there, he wasn't interested in gaming, and coding was new to him, but he knew that those were opportunities because this stuff is so interconnected across the different industries there, for him to be able to take advantage of that. So we're really proud of him and what he's been doing and able to achieve through these outside opportunities. Oops. All right. Before I move on to sort of the nonprofits, I don't know if Michelle, any questions at this point related to that, or we can save them till later.
Nope, no questions at this time. So I think we can keep going. If you do have questions that come up during the presentation, please use the question and answer section, and we will find an opportunity to have Matthew answer those questions for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so let's get into some nonprofit, some organizations that we've found that have really been doing some amazing stuff. This one, the first one is, well, this is the one I'm going to focus on today, is called the Brick Foundation. And their job is to go out there and sort of help to increase representation and entertainment, media, and tech industry jobs across California, across Los Angeles, but also across the country. And before I get into that, just a little bit of the stuff that I've done in my classrooms. We've done animatics before, and if that's new to you, basically it is an animated storyboard. So animation companies as well as live action will do these to sort of get a sense of the timing and how much stuff will cost, and like, all right, do we need to see this building? What do we need to build for our interiors and stuff like that? And this has been something I've been doing with my students for a while. And I love the animatic projects because it really helps to bring in so much stuff. You bring in your storytelling of having a character with a goal that has some obstacles, creating conflict along the way, and ultimately trying to find a resolution for that. It gets the kids drawing storyboards. And as I said, you know, kids in my classes might not be always the most amazing drawers and artists along the way, but stuff like this, when you're doing storyboards, it's really about conveying the story and the emotion that's the most important. So your drawings, I don't want to say are secondary, but you want to make sure that whatever it is that you can make sure that you're capturing the story and emotional elements there. You ultimately bring in editing because there's going to be the time component of it where you're editing this on something, and whether they're using iMovie or Premiere, Adobe Premiere are the most common ones that we'll use both at our middle school and high school level. So they're able to introduce that into it. And then sound design. Students really learn that the sound can tell that story and help you create worlds. Your music ultimately becomes the feeling. You've got your sound effects that help you build your world. And then when needed, your dialogue will really be there to help give you that voice to portray things. And we stress that, how, you try to use dialogue as limited as possible. We've all seen some phenomenal Pixar films, especially their shorts, which might not have a single word of dialogue in them. So we do stress visual storytelling, but sometimes you do need to share that to give your voice to characters. And all along the way, I love this because, again, they're having collaboration. They're going through the different parts of the jobs that exist in the animation field. And ultimately, they get some great peer feedback as they share both their drawings and their final edited version with it. So again, that's just a little bit of backstory. This was something we were already doing when we got introduced to Brick. We, back in 2018, we were their pilot program for their first thing, where they're trying to just reach out to different high school students to help find and build that pipeline that's moving into the industry. And this is a film that I'm going to show you in a little bit, but I want to sort of build up to that as we get into what they did. And so what we did with the Brick Foundation is they did an intensive weekend session where they took 12 of my students to a VFX house, an actual house that works in the industry, that works on stuff that's seen up on the big screen, seen up on the different streaming services. And they had use of the facility and sort of their technology. And the kids came up with their own animatics. So the 12 kids were broken into 4 different groups of 3, and they were each given the same prompt. Like, imagine the worst lunchroom ever. So that was all they had. That's what they come up with. So they had to brainstorm, come up with that story, spend some time going through, coming up with the ideas. What was your characters going to be? What's that location? Really working and making them digitally so they could work on it through their computers. So they started with pencil and paper, and then quickly either scan them in or redrew them digitally, working through the story components. And all this training, they each had 3 mentors who had worked in the industry, who were working in the industry, just sort of helped them along the way, walking them through those steps, really sort of keeping them to that deadline of making these and being able to have them ready to go. And as they continued this process, we ultimately had an award ceremony on our campus. We got to invite parents in. Brick Foundation came in to sort of just talk about it, these different jobs and opportunities. Out of that, they had industry people sort of voting on and evaluating them, and the top animators were given prizes where they ended up going to some different training facilities across Los Angeles. And I'm just checking the time. I'm not going to show this one now. I'll show this at the end if we do have time. But if I don't be able to get to it, I'll be able to share it with you as well, so you can check it out what the students did when we did that. But the students who were won, they were able to go to what is called the Gnomon workshop. This is in Los Angeles. They do offer online classes as well, but this is where industry people go for 3D design, for VFX, for game design, for character design. And they really have some amazing training programs, both in person and virtual, that you should check out. And my students were able to take different classes. So one of them took a character design class. They were able to go in and explore that, how they wanted to do that, come up with different characters. Another student took 3D design. So this is a 3D beetle that they designed, and getting into the textures and the coloring. And again, you look at that and it looks like it is a real beetle that has had a photograph taken of it. Doing some special effects where you'd see this type of stuff in your, whatever superhero movie you're watching, where they're taking elements and placing them over backdrops, or doing some compositing that we mentioned earlier, as well as just some 3D stuff. And I won't show them all, but I'll show this where they're able to kind of go through and, think about art as, it's just drawing and simple stuff like that. But when you get into this, there's a lot of science to it at all. The gravity, the weight, the reaction, the snapback, like sort of that friction as that wrecking ball hits the bricks, and you sort of see that resistance happening there as it hits and goes through there. And again, so it's not just about, I'm just drawing, it's simple art, but there's a lot of science, a lot of math brought into this as well. students who designed their own train. And so here again, acceleration, deceleration as it's going up hills, down hills, the twists and turns for the speed. Again, just a lot of science there. And again, that was all back in 2018. And I mentioned earlier how I was able to help write the first apprenticeship program that was approved by both the federal Department of Labor and California's educational system as well. Excuse me. And so that was done through the Brick Foundation. So I was working with them. I wanted to continue to help them, and my students were able to do more sort of workshops with them along the way. And this is an apprenticeship that exists right now. It is currently in its first year. And in this first year, it is limited and being piloted in California. But when we get around to the spring of 2024, it will be able to be released nationally. So I know that I heard there's a lot of people from across the country here, whether you're in Texas or Michigan or New Jersey or anywhere in between. This is an opportunity that could be available to your students as well. And ultimately, this is a large pipeline that they're trying to build. So all the way from 7th grade, all the way up to 18 to 24. Now, I will stress that these apprenticeship jobs, paid jobs, that could be in any of those animation, game design, or VFX fields, are for 18 to 24-year-olds. So that doesn't necessarily benefit our high school students directly, but it gives us something to reach for, gives us something to train to. And Brick has also launched its own pre-apprenticeship program. And even the stuff you're doing in your CTE classes are getting them ready for that. And so let me go on. So the different jobs that this focuses on revolve around these right here. So we've got visual effects artists, visual production artists, tech artists, animator, storyboard artist, concept artist, background artist, and digital effects artist. So those first 8 are all elements of some type of artistic ability, skill, and talent. And then the last one there, production manager. Kids can obviously have that, but to be able to run a team, be able to keep people on schedule is so essential and so important. So that's also something that they are stressing and able to sort of help train students to be able to do. And again, so this launched back in mid-November. The first cohort of people started back in March. So we're just now starting to get to the first students who are wrapping this up. Our first apprentices are wrapping this up. It could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months of this paid internship, depending on how their competencies are achieved throughout that. There is a submission window opening up within October, I believe, is when their next one is. So check that out. Check out the brickfoundation.org. To see what that's like. And again, for these first year, at this point, these would need to be jobs in California. But as I said, and by the spring of 2024, these could be outside of the state as well. And I do want to say that I had one of my alum was just selected last month. She graduated 4 years from our program. She finished up college. And she was just selected to be a VFX production manager apprentice at HBO. And I hear she's working on the House of Dragons and The Last of Us, which I'm pretty jealous and envious of that. But it's really great to sort of see students who have gone through CTE programs be able to do that. And I will say that my student, she is ultimately looking to be a live action director. But she knows that visual effects are just so pertinent and so prevalent and all that type of stuff. So she thinks if she can sort of get a behind the scenes look at how that is done, how to produce all of that, how that is done logistically, it's just going to make her a stronger director along the way. So, Michelle, I'm going to keep going here just so we make sure that we get everything in on time. So again, that was the nonprofit that we've had, that we've been able to work with through some of the partnerships that I've been able to have. And then really proud of just what we've been able to do with industry people as well. So, and a little backdrop again, just some other stuff that I've been doing with my students over the last, 5 years, 6 years. We sort of transitioned away from your physical sort of stop motion stuff, but we do 2D design elements where we can kind of see what the conceptual design of how you make characters, locations, stuff like that. A lot of 2D artwork. We're getting out our WACOM tablets, our computers, and drawing stuff. And we start on paper and pencil, but ultimately doing stuff digitally. So we do a mythology unit where students have to go through and kind of explore different mythological creatures and characters and stuff. Some little simple animations and be able to put that stuff in motion, literally, no pun intended. And then ultimately getting into some 3D modeling as well. And that's been new for me. I mean, myself, I didn't know all this stuff along the way. I still don't know it. I'm still constantly being trained. So that is something that I try to do as well with my summers and when I can find different conferences that provide some training along the way with that. So I will say DreamWorks was sort of the first partnership that we had, and this actually was probably my second or third year. You know, I like to try things. I until somebody tells me no, I'm going to keep asking, and I just reached out to DreamWorks and said, hey, do you have any educational like tours or things that you provide? And they're like, yeah, no, we don't do anything like that. We're a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm like, no, I get it. So they asked around. They, you know, sort of found somebody who's sort of interested in that, and we ended up taking 5 students the first year. This is 6 year. This is our second year. But for me, logistically as a teacher, like I can't really do a field trip for 6 teachers. So there's more paperwork on my end because we had to drive the students there ourselves, and we had to like get special permissions within our district and stuff like that. Which again, to me, hey, if it takes me 3 extra days to get some more paperwork done and a few extra weeks to get stuff set up, it was worth it. And it was just amazing to have the kids be able to go in there. And we literally were going like cubicle to cubicle and be like, this person works on backgrounds, this person works on characters, this was the editing person we've got. And the kids are really just sort of able to sit down and see what they were doing, what they were working on. This artist right here, she actually worked as an architect for a good decade of her career, of her life. And she was kind of getting bored with it. She's like, you know what, I want to go do animation. So she basically was in charge of building worlds, building the buildings, the locations, how it sort of was that what the characters are going to be interacting with along the way with that. And then by year 3 or 4, they're like, you know what, this is actually working. This is great. Bring the whole class. I was able to bring 35 students after we kind of did those first couple pilot programs, and they just kind of really blew it up and see everything. We got to go into their recording studio and just sort of see what it was like. Some of our kids were doing voices that then they would show how they match that to the characters' lips and stuff like that. We had some reverse storyboard drawings, which is a technique that they use, just very quick sketches, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, to be able to see what's really going on and be able to showcase their skills. And then even they got to go into their 3D design stuff where they actually had stuff rigged. So they had some of the characters from some of their movies, and the kids were able to like move them around and see how that type of stuff was working. And they didn't have to do coding necessarily, but they were able to sort of work on that. So again, these pictures are sort of across the last 4 or 5 years we've been working with DreamWorks. And then usually the favorite part of the students is we have lunch there. And then we get a whole new batch of 20 other artists come out, and they just sit down at tables and they're like, hey, you know what? I wasn't always into animation and I got here this way, or I've always dreamed of doing this and here's my pathway. So my students were able to hear the different ways that, you know, not everybody was dreaming on day one that they want to be an animator to get there. Or, you know what, I used to be horrible at drawing and I finally just got here and just kept working on it and was able to sort of get into these positions. So it's just really inspiring for the kids to hear that type of stuff through DreamWorks that we've been able to partner with. And then last but not least is Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon we got introduced to in 2018 as well. Myself and another school got to go there for what they call the best field trip ever. And it's pretty awesome. So we had to take our whole class there. We got a tour of their facilities as well. So I had kids, and actually there's Pedro, a student you saw speaking, who's over at NYU right now, back when he was a 9th grader. So this is all back before COVID. We had our first field trip there, and they've got this little room where they have archives of just some of their initial artwork and stuff like that, where it's really like a walk down memory lane for a lot of the students, because this was, you know, obviously what they grew up on. And then in that particular year, we had a storyboard. They basically showed us like about 4 minutes of a video of SpongeBob SquarePants. And even if you saw it, they wanted you to storyboard out like a new ending to that scene. So kids were able to kind of work on that. We had students get up and present their version of what that was. And I've never seen some of these kids here who were just so shy, but they got up there and they were just animated. They were just showing it. They're so excited to be a part of presenting the stuff to Nickelodeon. And then COVID stuff kind of slowed down, obviously, but back in the 2021-22 school year, my school was one of 3 schools in all of North America that Nickelodeon selected for its new pilot program, where they actually had mentors. We did it all virtually, but twice a month, mentors would come into my classroom through Zoom and just present master classes. They'd be able to, my students would be able to show their work to their mentors and get feedback from it. And then last year, our second year doing it, our first year we did 3D design. And then last year they broke us into 3 different cohorts across my capstone animation class. And one group did 2D animated shorts, one group did 3D modeling, and the third group did series development. And so that was pretty amazing. And this is from our 2D team. Again, they started with their paper and pencil, that they're already sort of familiar with that process, moved to digital renderings, and they learned a lot of different ways that Nickelodeon expects to be able to see this. As you're developing characters, you want to see, they call these the 5 turns. You make sure you can sort of see that it's proportions, how the character looks from the different angles, tons and tons of facial expressions. How can we make it to make sure that that face isn't getting too distorted? I mean, obviously there's some changing going on with the different emotional experiences, but to make sure it's staying sort of within the anatomical, just sort of what you'd expect with muscles and looks in there. We had some creatures and along the way with our short. And then we also moved on to 3D modeling. And again, this was definitely new to me. We're in our 3rd year of that now, but kids were able to go through and really sort of see, I mean, this is stuff, once they get into like the texturing and the coloring and stuff like that, like it jumps off the page, and it's really amazing what kids were able to do. And this, again, the students came up with their own story for each of their teams, and then they built assets as if they were going to be building that. They didn't actually animate this as a 3D project. It was really mostly about getting it so that it was able to be seen as part of their portfolio. So here's some of the other 3D work. Oops. Move ahead. So some buildings and stuff like that, as well as some characters. And again, I let students decide. Students who felt a little bit more sophisticated and more challenged, wanted to take on characters and people, I let them. Other students who wanted to do vehicles and wanted to do things like that. The student who's that Vespa that we saw in the beginning, he actually has gone off to college to study vehicle design, because that was something that was really interesting to him as well. So and then last but not least, our series development team, where again, one student pitched an idea of this whole massive, 22 episode a year series that was set in this sort of medieval world, where a son basically has his father kidnapped in front of him, and he basically has to go off on a journey to try to find a way to save him, what happened, and all the mystery behind it. And now these things here were not drawn by my students. Sometimes they will pull reference things from the internet and stuff like that. So again, and they learn that's part of the process. That's part of what stuff that is done at Nickelodeon. So they didn't have to necessarily draw everything, but really sort of giving the feel and the tone and the style that they're looking to have along the way. All right, and as we wrap up, I want to sort of let Carson Smith, who is the VP of Community Outreach at Nickelodeon, he's been our contact there and just been amazing to sort of help give these skills and give these opportunities to my students. And again, he actually was born and raised and went through LAUSD himself. So, he just has a special thing in his heart to be able to sort of reach out and help the kids who sort of went through the same process he did along the way. So let's get some words here from Carson.
My name is Carson Smith. I am the Vice President of Community Efforts at Nickelodeon. I'm also a product and a graduate of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Go Marshall Barristers. This past year, it's actually our 3rd year to be exact, had the pleasure of working with Matthew Waney and his students at the 32nd Street Magnet School at USC. On actually a series of animation mentorship programs. There were 3 tracks. There was a series development one, which was the first year the kids had attempted this. It was also a shorts, animated shorts. First year for the students attempting that. And then we came back for a 2nd year and had his students create a bunch of assets in a CG animation skills mentorship program. These programs were taught by Nickelodeon employees. There was also a series of master classes that the students were able to view, which broke down processes along the way. We saw the final works on Tuesday of this past week, and we're really impressed. There was some really nice drawings done. The series they broke out was really thoughtful, nuanced, and a really interesting story. And they really shone in the arena of the CG animation skills. There were some assets that were created that, according to one of the mentors, Michael Launder, who's also a CG supervisor on Transformer show, that were production ready, meaning he wouldn't have to do anything. He could just drop that asset into a shot and it would play. So hats off to Matthew and his students for all their hard work. And I have to say, after these past few years, it was really, really lovely to have the students in the building and to be able to sit down in person and see the results of all their hard work, all their thought, and all of Matthew's instruction over the course of the year. Cheers and be well. Thank you.
And again, and so we were able to do that and do that presentation back in May, where the students were able to showcase everything, actually be there in front of their mentors and pitching their stuff at Nickelodeon, which again just was like blowing the kids' minds and stuff like that. And especially the kids who were like, oh, I never even imagined I would be able to do this, or was really intimidated at the beginning, but they were able to sort of step up and really kind of make that their moment. And I tell them, I was like, I don't care if you're, I was like, I don't care if you're going into, you know, if you're never going to go to animation again, like put this at the top of your resume. When you're applying for colleges, put how you were in this Nickelodeon mentorship, because I mean, how many kids? There are 3 schools in all of North America, and you guys were part of it. So again, the excitement there. And last year we had, I think it was 18 students were in that class. And this year, because even more people are excited, we got 31 students this year working with them on 3D. And we're actually looking to explore some game design stuff with Unreal Engine this year through Nickelodeon in this partnership. And again, it's just able to find some stuff out there to really be able to help kids get their hands into these real world experiences and be able to go from there. So, all right. I guess we'll open it up to any questions. I guess the link I have here, if you're interested, you can drop your email and stuff in there, and I can send out the different elements as far as some of the videos that I didn't get a chance to show here, links to stuff that Brick has available to them. So feel free to send that out to that bit.ly link for Digital Arts 101. Michelle, any questions that we have?
Great. I think resources was a question that came up a couple of times. So if you want to leave that bit.ly up there for a little bit longer, yep. That way folks can grab that, and we'll try to put it in. Oh, Dana's on it. She already has a link in the chat for you for some quick access. Wonderful. So while some questions are coming in here, I just have one to kind of start us off. You shared a lot of great examples of collaborations that you've had with folks that are local to your area. And so for those who aren't in California, aren't in LA, what suggestions do you have for them to start building those relationships or reaching out in their community?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, obviously it's been fantastic, the people we've been able to, but you know, when I started off, like these weren't the people I was working with. These weren't the people that I was doing. So I did a lot of sort of small reaching out to organizations and different colleges as well. I will say I've done that. Obviously, LACC got to be a little bit bigger than what we had originally planned. But just seeing what is in your neighborhood, what is in your community, what is in your region. Maybe it's something, obviously first identifying the skills you have, if it's animation, video production. I mean, those sort of my background, and you might be outside of AME, but what can be done there, what partnerships, and even bringing in guest speakers. We had done stuff where we brought in, we did this for 3 or 4 years before COVID. We had our women in film panel that we do, and we'd bring in people from the industry to came in and speak. And at one point, we got somebody from the Hollywood Foreign Press. Again, a little bit of a bigger organization, but you never know who you bring in. And the next thing I know, they're like, we want to bring a guest speaker to you, type of stuff like that. So sometimes it's just about bringing people in, being willing to make those cold calls, being willing to have people say no. And I have also had places where, for my school districts, they're like, hey, this opportunity came up and it fell through for another school. Are you willing to do it? And I mean, unless I've got an absolute conflict with that, I'm always saying yes, because you just never know what that's going to lead to, what that's going to end up being. And I'll talk from my video production example is again, my kids have been making documentaries that really sort of stress that. And I think that's a strong way to bring high school kids into filmmaking, because inevitably our stories are a little simpler or a little cliched and stuff like that. Our actors, I don't care if Bobby, he doesn't look like a 75-year-old grandfather type stuff. So, but those documentaries can really be authentic and true. And we were doing this, and this was seen by our district, and they're like, hey, would you mind recording an event that's happening in our district? So my kids got brought in for that, and it was an evening thing, and we were able to do it. We filmed it, we edited it. And again, as the kids got that experience, a little bit more pressure, a little bit more, this is something important that they wanted done, and we did that. And that happened 2 or 3 times. And then 3 years after that, we actually got selected by our district to do a 28-minute promotional video, where they went to 6 different campuses, interviewed people, got their B-roll, and that ended up being screened on our local television channel, and all my kids got IMDb credits. And again, is that going to happen where you are? I think it's sometimes easier to do that stuff if you're in a smaller community. If you're in I'm originally from Michigan, and just, it's something where, if it's something smaller, it's going to be more unique, it's going to be more novel. I mean, you're in LA, you're like, hey, can we come and use your filmmaking? They're like, we got 100 people who know how to make films. Like it's sometimes more of a challenge being in a city that sort of thrives and has an industry in that. So, think creatively, think what your students could do, and go out and see what you can ask, see what services and what types of collaborations you can do in your community, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great example. We talk a lot about project-based learning and finding opportunities that, when the work is authentic, it drives student engagement. And so being able to lean in for an authentic purpose for creation helps kind of guide that engagement along. Wonderful. So we have a question coming from New Jersey. Is the Nickelodeon program available for their students? Is that something that's still ongoing?
At this point, they are still keeping it small because it is evolving there. I know this year they're trying to do an in-person on-site hybrid experience with students. So I know that they're really sort of quote unquote keeping it small with those number of students. So probably wouldn't hurt to ask, but I think that is going to be kind of limited to that. But the one thing that's been amazing coming out of COVID and stuff like that, I mean, Nickelodeon especially, and so many places, like they have a lot of resources up online. They have a lot of resources that are available to you for different guest speakers, different training units and things like that are available. And I know that's one thing the Brick Foundation, like they are working on coming up with their own units and their own curriculum as well that can help teachers, because ultimately they want to help have that pathway as their program ultimately builds to be a national program in the spring of 2024. So there are different resources out there. Again, I would think Nickelodeon, I can't speak for them, but it seems like as far as this year, they're still sticking with those 3 schools and then trying to include this in-person thing with that. So, but it wouldn't hurt to reach out and to ask because you never know when they're looking to do something more. And one thing, I mean, I don't know about Nickelodeon specifically, but a lot of those bigger studios will have stuff out of New York City on the East Coast. So it could even be something where if they're not doing it, they might have other subsidiaries and different organizations that they work with that could be out there as well.
Great. And then we have another question. I have a student who is in my mechatronics class, but would be really good for art animation. How can I add curriculum to my class if the student has something heading in that direction? Right. They're currently working in SolidWorks CAD and Fanuc robots.
Okay. So I'm sorry, they're doing like 3D design ultimately? Is that what they said?
Seems that way.
Yeah. I mean, there's some great stuff out there. I mean, what we used the last 2 years was called Blender. If you're familiar with that, that is a free 3D modeling program. Now, sometimes you might be using Maya and stuff like that, which students may or may not be able to use for free. But that's something, and Blender is actually becoming a little bit more frequently used in the industry. But that's a great way to have students do that. And there are so many phenomenal tutorials out there on YouTube that are on that. And we talk to our mentors like, oh, so-and-so is making a ring with a great gem on it. They're like, go on YouTube and find something, and you're not going to find anything that's perfect to that. So my kids got pretty good at that. Like, oh, I wanted to make, we had one like sort of fantasy nature project, and it was sort of elves and fairies and stuff like that. They wanted to make this like satchel made out of leaves. So they went on and they found like a satchel, and then they found a different one on how to make leaves, and they found a different one on how to make like this fancy clasp type stuff. And they ended up like, building pieces from all these different tutorials to be able to put that together. But I will say 3D design, like I don't want to say it guarantees it, but it is like in such high demand. Like if your students can do some 3D design, and again, even if it's like vehicles, it doesn't have to necessarily be character design per se, but that's the type of stuff where if your kids can do that, sort of put them in that direction, it's just going to open up opportunities, whether it's college and or career, what they're looking to do first. So 3D design, anytime you can get that in there, that's phenomenal. And the last thing I will say to that is that, again, my school's going to be using Unreal Engine. That is also a free program, and they have got phenomenal curriculum for that it basically unit by unit will break it all down. You do need some other powerful computers. I assume if you're doing 3D design, you've already got some stuff like that. But that is another thing that's completely free. They only ask that you pay royalties if you guys are making more than $1 million on your project. So I hope you have that problem in the near future. Now, the only limitation with that is it does not work on Mac. And that was an issue I had at first because I had a Mac lab. So if you've got PCs, that's something you can have your kids work on and be able to use, whether it's in your classroom and or outside the classroom as well.
that was it for our questions that came in. I'll keep my eyes peeled in case anything else pops up. But I do want to take a moment just to say thank you and kind of share a little bit more information about WACOM specifically and how WACOM can be a
Sorry,
partner in
Michelle,
that work.
sorry, I do want to share one last thing since we're here at ACTE. If anybody's going to the conference in November, December in Phoenix, I will be doing 2 workshops there, one on the art of grant writing and one on how to launch a thriving animation pathway. So if anybody's going to that, check it out. I don't know what days those are yet, but I hope to see you guys and meet people in person there.
Yeah.
All yours, Michelle.
Perfect. And we'll also be joining Matthew at the ACTE conference. WACOM will be in the exhibit hall. I am looking forward to my first ACTE conference this year as well. Not presenting, but I hope to get in on your grant writing one. I've seen a webinar, but I'd love to see that one and see that presentation live. So Matthew has shared his experience with preparing students for careers through the great dual enrollment program, internships, and the other collaborations that he's had within his city and other partners. But one of those other pieces of preparation is making sure that students are working on industry standard programs and devices. So like Matthew was just talking about with Blender and Maya and any other programs that you're using, WACOM is friendly with those programs as well. So I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to share about WACOM and how we are a solution in your creative education classrooms. As the market leader in pen-based technology, we are considered to be the industry standard. We're well used in education around the world. And since this is the industry standard for creative careers, our products in preparation for students to be able to use them as they prepare for their career gives them a great leg up once they leave your classrooms. My first slide never wants to participate here with me. We offer a range of education products from a basic pen tablet all the way up to front of classroom podium displays. But what we find most often in the CTE and art classrooms are Intros Pro tablets and our Cintiq pen displays. And these products are able to provide students with the experience of professional quality while they're learning those foundational skills. So learning early how to personalize their experience to their own creative needs and their own creative workflows. And we touched a little bit on some products and software. With the right hardware and software, they'll be well prepared for industry. A lot of our partners, when devices are purchased, there's some free access to programs as well. We do like to say that we play well with others in education. That's what's on our report card because we are software and hardware agnostic there. And you can sign up to receive our education newsletter. Our WACOM support community is growing in the education field where we have some open forums for questions and answers and sharing of resources in our WACOM community specific to educators. And we are super excited to have had this opportunity not only to partner with ACTE in providing this webinar, but also having a great guest like Matthew to speak to his experience and the work that he's doing with students, and sharing so many examples of that collaboration and getting out there for authentic work. So we definitely appreciate all of the time that he has put into his programs and sharing what he's done so that others can kind of grow and reach out and do something similar in their schools. We will follow up with an email thanking you for your time today. It will have your recording and we'll also be announcing our 3 winners from our random drawing for those who presented today. All right. Or excuse me, attended today.
Oh, you mean I don't get one of those for presenting?
I'm sure we can work something out, huh?
Next time. But yeah, I want to thank everybody as well. Thank you for taking your time to come here. I hope that was helpful. And again, use that bit.ly link to get connected and share some stuff. And obviously, if you have questions, send them my way as well through that. But yeah, I hope this is helpful for you. And again, wherever you are, think about what abilities, what partners, who could be there. Even if you start small, start somewhere, and it just keeps building and building from there.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.